Thursday, the 17th of July. Welcome to the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. All right, let's get briefed. First up, disturbing news from the front lines of the war in Ukraine, where the Putin regime is reportedly intensifying their use of chemical weapons against Ukrainian forces. Later in the show, as a fragile ceasefire holds between Syria's Druze community and the governing regime in Damascus, Syria's Islamist president is lashing out at Israel over their strikes on the capital, accusing leaders of Jerusalem of seeking, quote, chaos and destruction. We'll have the latest details. But first, today's afternoon spotlight. I want to begin with one of the more disturbing developments of the war in Ukraine to date, as a new Dutch intelligence report confirms that Russian forces are deploying chemical weapons, including a World War I-era chemical agent that's been banned under international law. It's hard to believe that Putin wouldn't adhere to international law. Who would have thunk it? In a 4th of July report, the Netherlands Military Intelligence and Security Service, known as the MIVD, because of course they have an acronym, corroborated by Germany's Foreign Intelligence Agency, detailed how Russian troops are using drones to drop gas grenades on Ukrainian battlefield positions. The tactic, designed to flush soldiers from trenches and dugouts, then leaves them exposed to follow-up artillery and drone strikes. Until now, Russia's use of tear gas in combat had been widely suspected but only sporadically confirmed. This report changes that. Dutch and German intelligence now say that the Russian forces have gone further, deploying an agent known as chloropicrin. It's a chemical agent so toxic that it can kill in confined spaces, and one that's been explicitly banned under the Chemical Weapons Convention since its adoption. The report makes clear this is not an isolated incident, but part of what MIVD calls a standard operating procedure among Russian forces. Intelligence officials say the Kremlin is actively facilitating these chemical strikes, with its military leadership fully complicit, and Moscow simultaneously expanding its chemical weapons infrastructure. According to the MIVD director, Russia is now deploying chemical agents, quote, with ease, as the Kremlin recruits new scientists and accelerates illicit toxin research programs. Now, it's worth pointing out that the U.S. State Department had flagged the use of chloropicrin months earlier in a 1st of May statement, calling it part of a broader pattern of violations. That statement, for whatever reason, has since quietly disappeared from the State Department's website. But at the time, it made clear that Russia's actions constituted a serious breach of international law and formed the basis for new sanctions against more than 280 individuals and entities tied to Vladimir Putin's regime. The Dutch defense minister called the revelations, quote, absolutely unacceptable, urging the international community to respond with tougher sanctions, deeper diplomatic isolation from Moscow, and continued military support for Kyiv. His warning to lawmakers was blunt, stating, quote, we are making this public now because Russia's use of chemical weapons must not become normalized. If the threshold for using this type of weapon is lowered, it's dangerous not only for Ukraine, but also for the rest of Europe and the world, end quote. Well, I can't spot the lie in that statement. Ukrainian officials say the chemical threat is already widespread. The country's Ministry of Defense has logged more than 9,000 chemical-related attacks since the 2022 full-scale invasion began. At least 3 soldiers are confirmed dead from direct exposure, though officials say limited detection capabilities mean many attacks do go unverified. In response to the report's findings, Ukraine has formally petitioned the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, otherwise known as OPCW because they too have an acronym, to launch a full-scale investigation into Russia's alleged violations. The OPCW's Director General, as a result, has pledged to ramp up monitoring operations along the war's front lines and urged its 193 member states to support a new investigative mechanism aimed at identifying, quote, perpetrators, organizers, and sponsors of chemical attacks, end quote. Yeah, well, that sounds like something that's going to accomplish nothing. But such a mechanism would mirror the OPCW's 2018 inquiry into Syria, an effort that found both the Assad regime and ISIS responsible for using chemical weapons on civilians and soldiers during that country's civil war, which, of course, resulted in nothing of consequence being done about it. The United Kingdom, wasting little time, has sanctioned 2 Russian individuals and one company linked to Russia's chemical weapons infrastructure. And EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas offered a blunt assessment of the MIVD report, warning that Moscow is intentionally weaponizing human suffering. She said from Brussels, quote, "It shows that Russia wants to cause as much pain and suffering as possible. It is really unbearable," end quote. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I don't think Putin cares if the international community engages in hand-wringing and declarations of angst. Maybe that makes me sound cynical. All right, up next, Syria's Islamist president lashes out at Israel over their strikes on Damascus, accusing leaders of Jerusalem of seeking, quote, chaos and destruction. I'll be right back. Hey, Mike Baker here. Let's take just a brief moment to talk about ways to protect your hard-earned savings. Now, look, I know the personal finance talk is not everybody's favorite, but it is important to your financial health. Now, one of the smartest ways that you can protect your savings is through diversification. And one way to diversify is with gold from the Birch Gold Group. Look, gold is up some 40% in the past year. And central banks, well, they're buying record amounts of gold, in part because of global instability. Birch Gold Group makes it easy to own physical gold, either in your IRA or, like a lot of folks, just stored safely at home. Just text PDB to the number 989-898, and Birch Gold will send you a free information kit on gold. There's no obligation. It's just useful information. With an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Just text PDB to the number 989-898. Welcome back to the Afternoon Bulletin. I want to return to our coverage of the sectarian violence that continues to plague Syria as Islamist leaders in Damascus lash out at Israel, dampening hopes of normalizing ties with Jerusalem. Now, here at the PDB, we continue to stay focused on the instability in Syria because, well, recent history tells us that the situation could deteriorate rapidly. Now, Syria, it does have the potential to be a positive force in the region, to stabilize internally with opportunity for all the various minorities and groups, and possibly to be a game changer in developing relations with Israel. That's the optimistic look. Or it could devolve into a fractured mess, similar to Libya or Iraq after the fall of Hussein, or a place like Yemen, battered by an ongoing civil war fueled by Iran. And ISIS is working hard to rebuild in Syria. They likely view that environment as their best opportunity in the region. On Thursday, Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Shara, accused Israel of pursuing chaos and destruction in the country following Jerusalem's airstrikes on the capital of Damascus in support of Syria's minority Druze community. In a televised address, Shara condemned what he described as Israel's, quote, wide-scale targeting of civilian and government facilities, likely referring to a strike that partially leveled Syria's defense ministry building on Wednesday. Shara said he was left with two choices: engage in an open war with Israel at the expense of the Druze, or de-escalate with the embattled religious minority and allow Druze clerics to, quote, return to reason and prioritize the national interest. It was Shara's most direct condemnation of Israel since he took power in January, complicating recent diplomatic talks regarding Syria joining the Abraham Accords and normalizing ties with Jerusalem. Shara continued, quote, the Israeli entity, known for its repeated attempts to destabilize us and sow division, once again seeks to turn our land into a battlefield of chaos and to dismantle the fabric of our people, end quote. The Sunni Islamist leader vowed to protect the Druze community from further bloodshed, despite the participation of his own government forces in the attacks on the minority group. The Druze, however, well, they remain deeply mistrustful of the Sunni Islamist government that replaced the regime of Assad after his overthrow in December. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has previously described the new government as a, quote, extremist Islamic regime and a threat to Israel. For now, a ceasefire declared on Wednesday is holding between regime forces and the Druze community in southern Syria. According to CNN, as part of the truce, Syrian forces have already begun withdrawing from the Druze-majority city of Sweda, which became the flashpoint of the latest fighting between Sunni Islamist groups and the Druze community. But it's unclear just how long the ceasefire will last, particularly after an initial ceasefire collapsed just hours after it was announced on Tuesday evening. While Druze religious leader Sheikh Youssef Jarbu agreed to the latest truce, Another leading Druze figure rejected the terms and encouraged his supporters to keep fighting. As we've been tracking here on the PDB, Syria was plunged back into unrest on Sunday after violent clashes erupted between local Druze minority groups and Sunni Islamist Bedouin fighters in the city of Sweda. Syrian government forces soon joined the fight, reportedly backing the Islamist Bedouins. The subsequent fighting left more than 350 people dead, according to the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, including nearly 100 members of the Druze minority, 27 of whom were reportedly executed by regime forces. Israeli forces also joined the fight on Monday, carrying out airstrikes against the Syrian military to protect the Druze from further violence. Their strikes escalated on Wednesday, with IDF jets hitting targets in the Syrian capital of Damascus, near the presidential palace. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Wednesday that the U.S. had stepped in and engaged both sides to end the bloody conflict. Regarding the tensions between Israel and Syria, Rubio called the situation a, quote, misunderstanding. That's very diplomatic. Rubio said, quote, we've agreed on specific steps that will bring this troubling and horrifying situation to an end tonight. This will require all parties to deliver on the commitments they've made, and this is what we fully expect them to do, end quote. Under the terms of the ceasefire, the Syrian government agreed to a complete halt of military operations and to withdraw their forces from southern Syria, where Israel has established a demilitarized zone near their shared border. Leaders in Damascus have also agreed to form a joint monitoring committee of Druze and Syrian regime officials to investigate the crimes and legal violations that occurred during the fighting. The Druze community, meanwhile, will be charged with overseeing security in the region. Quite simply, it remains to be seen whether Sharia is capable of controlling the various extremist groups that continue to target the country's religious minorities. And that, my friends, is the PDB Afternoon Bulletin for Thursday, the 17th of July. Now, if you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. And to listen to the show ad-free, that is quite possible, you know. Just become a premium member of the President's Daily Brief by visiting pdbpremium.com. I'm Mike Baker, and I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool. Hey, Mike Baker here. Let's talk personal finances, shall we? Let me ask you a question, and this will sound rather intriguing. What if you could delay your next 2 mortgage payments? That's right. Imagine putting those 2 payments in your pocket and finally getting a little breathing room. Well, it's possible when you call American Financing today. If you're feeling stretched by everyday expenses, groceries, auto payments, various bills are piling up, well, you know what? You're not alone. The truth is, a lot of Americans are putting these expenses on credit cards, and for many of them, well, there doesn't seem to be a way out. But American Financing can show you how to use your home's equity to pay off that debt. If you're feeling stressed and stretched, call American Financing today to learn how they could help. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you restructure their loans and consolidate debt, all without upfront fees, and that's important. And their customers are saving an average of $800 a month. Now, I'm no mathematician, but that's something like a $10,000 raise. It's fast, it's simple, and it could save your budget. Call now. No obligation, just useful information that can help put you on the right track. Call the number 866-885-1881. That's 866-885-1881. Or just visit AmericanFinancing.net/PDB.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment, a really positive, nice, and kind comment. That would be appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our daily updates.